I just wondered where you're from and why are you here at World Pride?
So I'm from London in the UK. I'm here because I've been living in Copenhagen for 2 years, and I'm actually just about to move to Berlin, but I'm here just to catch the beginning of World Pride. Yeah.
Well, you're from the UK, and I wondered how is like the LGBTQ rights in the UK at the moment?
At the moment, I think it's pretty good. I feel quite privileged to come from there. In comparison to other countries, I think we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go, for sure.
Is there any particular areas there where you think that you guys are lagging behind?
I think where it comes a little bit, it gets a bit politicized and commercialized, and it starts to get lost in that. Because London is, it's obviously very commercial and it's very capitalistic, and I think sometimes it's more about how much money we can make out of, the gays or the LGBTQIs, whatever, than, really supporting.
Well, we also have, at least here in Denmark, we're talking a lot about transgender rights. Mm-hmm. Is that a big topic in the UK as well?
It is becoming that way, yeah, for sure. I think it's something that's been more recent years. And also, I think as a gay man, I think I'm learning more about transgender rights than I ever did before. So it's definitely a newer trend.
It's a good thing. Which is the good thing. In your life, being gay, have you met any insults or hate crimes or anything?
Yes, I am 36, so screaming people. I went to school in the 90s, 2000s, when we still had Section 28. So it was actually a lot more acceptable then, even for the institutions, the schools themselves, to kind of discriminate against you. You didn't have the support from them, so I used to get a lot of bullying at school, which was just brushed off because it wasn't politically necessary for the school to actually back me at all. I think that's changed a lot now, which is great. But yeah, that used to happen a lot. And in London, for sure, it's not quite like in Denmark. You have to be careful which street you're walking on if you want to hold hands, because there's still a lot of hate crime there. I'm lucky that I haven't been caught in anything too violent.
Michael, you're here at World Pride in Copenhagen. First off, why you're here and where you're from originally?
So, originally from Malta, city 1 kilometer away, or a town 1 kilometer away from the capital city. I'm here because I live here. Been living here for almost 2 years, and was living in London before. So kind of I've been on the move quite a bit, ultimately.
Okay. You've lived abroad for quite some time, but when you lived in Malta, how was the gay rights there?
I left. So I spent the first 22 years of my life in Malta, and then was moving around, going back sometimes. So it's like a bit of two different lives, because when I was young, it's like even the word gay in a way did not exist. Malta has come a long way since then, because it has, at least on a legal level, there are a lot of rights. But I think the difficulty is that at times it does not match where people's perspectives have changed or not. So I think there is a bit more acceptance, there is more, at least awareness. And definitely gay people are more, or LGBTQ people are more visible nowadays. But still, some attitudes still lag behind, I think.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny, because when you look at it politically, law-wise, Malta is top level, but you say that the Maltese people not really...
Yeah, I think education on that level has lagged a bit behind, and you can change laws very rapidly, but it doesn't mean that the mentality of the people changes. I'm not saying that it hasn't changed. It is changing. That's how I would describe it. It's also true, I think, that gay rights were part of or LGBT rights were part of the political manifesto as well. unfortunately. There's also the religious side in Malta, which of course has an impact. It is shifting on some levels positively and not on others. And that always has an impact, of course.
So the process that Malta have been through when it comes to LGBT, have you in your younger days experienced any like discrimination or anything?
On a personal level, no, as in not directly. But ultimately, I think there's the issue of living in a culture where you already know that you're out of bounds. So I have never seen directly homophobic crime, for example. But it's always the case that people use homophobic slurs to offend other people. That was kind of my school days. So in a way, you know that, but never on not directed at me. But it was also true that I was not out. So that was kind of.
But do you think that has changed? That it is improving? That it's less and less?
I'm not sure. I don't.
We hope.
I hope. I think in some spheres it would be a bit different. It would be a bit better. But ultimately, I think it's still a culture where you have to be a man a bit. So I assume that it would still be a bit more the case. But having said that, I was a teacher for some years, and it was very clear that young kids are more aware and a bit more accepting than at my age at least.
In Finland, do you guys experience any hate crimes or discrimination on a daily basis, or is it like very far away and not something that is out in public?
I'd say that it is a daily problem and situation, but it is like different on who are affected by it the most and how violent the hate speech and hate crimes are. In Finland and also all over the world, the trans feminine and trans women are the most
Exposed?
Yeah, exposed. And they are the ones that are like hunted down by these different kind of groups that are like there's so much hate speech coming, like different far right groups, but also these very conservative, maybe Christian and also groups that try to frame themselves as feminists, but are really far away from feminism in reality. But it's a daily thing in our lives.
Okay. So why do you think that they are targeting transgender in general?
I think that it is scary when trans people tell that the stereotypes about men and women and gender and sexuality and everything that relates to that and what we all are like educated on, what under the worldview that we have grown in our lives. And when trans activists and trans people try to dismantle these kind of norms, it seems I don't know if it seems like weird and scary, and also the hate speech and discrimination is really common because it is easy to find this little group that to blame everything for, as they are the people who have made like something terrible happening.
So do you feel like that the hate speech has increased during COVID, as like social media has been a big thing and people just been sitting at home and just raging? Has that been an effect in Finland too?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing, and I think that in addition to that, that these different kind of far right groups and so on are getting more places and space to spread the hate. The hate is also little by little, from my perspective, that it's becoming more normal and normalized, and at the same time when the attitudes towards trans people and the knowledge is getting better and so on the other hand, this kind of hateful and ignorant way of speaking and thinking about trans people is also getting its head up and raising.
Do you think that it caused by misinformation and not enough education? Like people don't know what it is and therefore they're scared?
That might be one of the reasons, but as I see it, most of the hate speech and the most violent attacks against trans people are really like calculated, and they are really planned, and they come from the place where far right people try to when they try to determine which kind of actions are good and which kind of people are acceptable, and they do these kind of attacks to other kinds of group of people also, but the way they talk about trans people and the way they spread hate on trans people is I think that it is some kind of thing that they know exactly what they are doing on purpose.
Matti, do you know if there has been like an increase in discrimination and hate crimes over the past years in Finland?
I think it's like hard to say a simple yes or no, because we have the same problems when it comes to hate crimes and hate speech and discrimination in Finland, experienced by people from sexual and gender minorities. That it's super underreported. There's low trust towards police from the LGBTIQ persons, and especially I think trans community, and it's of course not the community's fault, but actually we have witnessed trans and homophobic attitudes in the police forces. So I mean, that's how it goes. I don't know, actually I think it's important to notice that at least the sort of the forms of hate crimes and hate speech, they have changed, and we are also, just as VALO said, we're experiencing the whole anti-gender narratives and that kind of hate in Finland as well. And maybe one thing that came into my mind from your comment was that I think one of the reasons actually, and one of the significant things is that I think the hate is increasingly being targeted against trans people and also those who work for trans rights, the allies, and especially those who are experiencing intersectional identities, so probably for example for racialized trans people. And I think actually one of the reasons is one that we already talked about, or VALO talked about earlier, that there have been positive legislative changes when it comes to the rights of sexual minorities. For example, I think after the same-sex marriage was adopted, when the laws were changed in that, I think then after that, the hate actors have really, I don't know if you agree, but I think they have increasingly then, targeted the hate against trans people. So when we're talking about, the reform of the Trans Act, legal gender recognition, I think it's important to remember that it's very important, because that would be also a message in the society that Finland accepts everybody, and I think that would be also a strong message that we're not accepting any kind of hate.
Kaspars, you're from Latvia.
Yes.
And in Latvia, what is it about the LGBT rights? Like, are you guys top-notch, or where do you define yourself?
So Latvia, according to ILGA Europe map, is on the 41st place out of the 49 countries. So we have to say we're the second worst scoring in the European Union. So it's not, let's say, the best situation when it comes to Europe. It's like the only country currently looking at the previous data, the worst is only in Poland. We obviously see what happens in other countries like Hungary. So, but yeah, currently Latvia is scored as the second worst place in the European Union when it comes to the LGBT rights.
Okay. So what rights do you guys have then?
Oh, it's very little, apart from everything, but it's mainly the protection from the discrimination at workplace. So that was something done very long time when we just joined the European Union. So it was like 2006. So and then we have an ombudsman where we can actually go and file the cases. It's like if feel the cases of discrimination, and then we have like somewhere in between, not even a mention, but we're on the and others when it comes to the protections from the hate crimes. So this is just about it. Just summarize what we have. So we have a way much longer list than what we don't have, and
so all your rights actually came when you guys joined the EU.
Pretty much, it's like the protection from discrimination and employment. It was actually mandatory when you join the European Union, or when you member a country of the European Union. You have to align your legislation according to the EU legislation. So this was just a mandatory thing. It's like the politicians didn't really want to do this. It's like there were actually movement not to do this, but there is a nice word in the EU legislation called infringement procedure. So this is what they were risking for. So that, okay, let's give these minor rights in order to get out of the trouble.
So everyday life for an LGBT person in Latvia, what is it like? Like, can you guys walk freely, or are you getting discriminated on the streets, or?
Well, everyday life is pretty much the same as everybody else. So it's like everybody thinks it's like we're kind of wake up in a morning by being completely different. But it's you have to think about many things and more practical things. Discrimination happens. The thing is that people don't report this. Hate crimes happen, hate speech now, especially during the COVID period. It's like there was so much hate speech online, so people are just stuck at home, so they can express the worst of them on the social media especially. And the all other things, if you have a family, then you have to think about practicalities, because we're one of the six countries in the European Union where there's absolutely no rights for the same-sex families. We're not even recognized. So yeah, it's quite of a struggle when it comes to rights. So, but an everyday life is like an everyday life. So it's like I'm more concerned about, for example, young LGBT people. So, for example, who seek assistance, who seek help, who seek information. So this is what we're lacking.
If we look at the future for Latvia, where do you see Latvia on the LGBTQ plus rights in like 5 years?
Well, one hope is that we have the partnership bill. So it's like many people think about like big plans. I would say for 5 years, we really hope that there is a partnership regulation, so at least the same-sex families are recognized by the law. So it's and that we have at least some protections for the LGBT families. This is what's needed, and that's what's required. And I really hope in the next 5 years we will be able to achieve that.
If we look at Lithuania and we look at discrimination and hate crimes, how are you guys doing on that?
Well, of course, we are happy that in Lithuania we have law on equal opportunity, we have ombudsman on equal opportunities, and we as an organization work really hard with this hate crime and non-discrimination policy in our country. But you know, this is a never-ending story. I mean that my feeling is as much we work on it, as much we see how much we have to do with all society, because you know we as an organization quite small compared with whole governmental and politician, and it means that what I see, we really are looking for big unity with politicians, with political agenda in our country, and of course with help of European Parliament, the European Commission, what we already have.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the Lithuanian people, are they against LGBT rights or are they opposed it?
You know, because we are one of the main organizers of Baltic Pride in our country, I have to say I remember when we started at 2010. For me, it was terrible moment when I realized how hate crime and hate speech might materialize. You know, when you start feeling this hate crime and hate speech here and physical, it was physical threat, and it was so dangerous. And of course I see when we organized second Baltic Pride in 2013, it was already better. Then 2016, I see that part of society already this movable middle and allies, not only LGBT community, but friends becoming more bigger, and it's good. And now when we organized in 2019, it was the area of joyness of human rights. It means that, of course, the situation changes, but once again, you know, it's really when you start looking back, you suddenly realize as much active you are, your position start working against you too. And this is a good lesson for me, and I might send a message for our human rights watchdogs, you know, because it means that we will be probably at the same situation always. Each day we have to fight for our rights, because as much we success, our opposition will try to push you back too. It's, you know, this is rules of life, probably. It's not, I'm not skeptic, but this is how it's works.